So today I am going to read chapter 4 in the Magic School Bus, and the title of this chapter is called Booting Up. Oh, of course, Miss Frizzle said. Then she pressed a button on the remote control, and Carlos changed into a horse? Nope, that's not right, Miss Frizzle muttered. She pressed again and again. He and Wanda turned into an elephant, a mouse, a hippo, and a chipmunk, and a lemur and a hen. Oh, I love this thing. Just say when. So here's a picture of Miss Frizzle turning Wanda and Carlos into animals such as a horse. Now is the picture that shows an example of. A second later, the kids were Carlos and Wanda again. When? They both shouted. Aw, Jody groaned, disappointed. I wanted her to keep going. As the kids followed Galapagos Gill and Miss Frizzle, Tim had a sudden thought. Galapagos Gill? He asked. With everything in unison, don't you worry about something throwing that off? Unison means all together, when multiple things are happening at the same time. You bet your giant tortoise we do, Galapagos Gill replied. That's why we inspect everything. Galapagos Gill led them to the airport terminal building, where travelers were arriving by plane. So this is a picture of Galapagos Gill and all the students, and they're meeting up with someone. You mean like luggage, coats, hats, and everything? Keisha asked in surprise. Everything, Galapagos Gill replied, nodding and pointing to some workers who were inspecting and brushing the soles of travelers' shoes as they passed through the airport. We don't want any new plants or animals to get here. Accidents happen, you know. Accidents? Tim asked. So you have to look at everything really close up? Miss Frizzle gasped in delight. Tim, what a great idea, she exclaimed, and she pulled out the remote control again. Oh no, Arnold groaned. With a click of a button, Miss Frizzle had shrunk down herself and the entire class, including Galapagos Gill, so they were smaller than ants. Wahoo! She cried. I love getting microscopic. Microscopic is something that's teeny, teeny, tiny that you can only see with a microscope. That was so magical, Jody cried. She could hardly contain her excitement. Majorly magical. So here's a picture of Miss Frizzle in Galapagos Gill, and Miss Frizzle is about to press the button to make them really, really tiny that you can see in this picture. And this is an ant, and you can tell that the kids, the students, and the teachers are way smaller than the ants. Sure, Arnold agreed, pointing to an ant looming over them, until you get eaten. But the ant had other things on its mind. Miss Frizzle led her students to a pair of hiking boots in the grass. They looked enormous compared to the microscopic class. Let's suit up to boot up, she called, and with one click of the remote, the class was outfitted from head to toe in rock climbing gear. They raced toward the boot that was lying on its side and began to climb up the sole. So this is a picture of Arnold being worried about the ant eating him. That looks like a big, scary ant. I'm rock climbing on a boot, Jody said. Okay, look closely, everyone, Miss Frizzle reminded them. Anything could be an invasive species that throws off the island's delicate balance. Dorothy Ann looked up from the enormous speck of soil she was studying. Is an invasive species a plant or an animal the island's not ready for? She asked. Yes, to the guests from DA, Miss Frizzle replied enthusiastically. If things that already live here have no defense, the new species can take over and change everything. So that's what an invasive species is. It's something that could take over and change the whole balance of an ecosystem. And you don't want that to happen because the animals who already live there might not be able to anymore. And change everything. Arnold mumbled grumpily. I know what that's like. There's a lot of dirt on these boots, Keisha pointed out. Looks like he's been hiking in the woods back in his home country. Well, let's hope there were no invasive hitchhikers, Miss Frizzle replied. So here's a picture of the students climbing the boot. And here's a picture of, I think it's Keisha finding the dirt on the hitchhiker's boot. Arnold took a step forward, but his foot got stuck in the mud. Ah! He cried as he fell face down in some dirt. And then a bug crawled out. We have insects! Carlos announced. Arnold got to his feet but stumbled a second time. This time, he landed in a glob of mud that was covered in tiny white dots. And those look like insect eggs, Jody pointed out. Oh no, Arnold landed in insect eggs. Ew. Jody, you're right, Miss Frizzle exclaimed. These insect eggs could mean the unwelcome arrival of a whole family of gypsy moths. And we don't want that, Dorothy Ann gasped, pulling up some images on her tablet. Here's what they can do. She showed her friends a photo of a healthy green forest. Then she showed them a photo of the same forest after gypsy moths had been there. The leaves on the trees had completely disappeared. They had been eaten by the gypsy moths. That poor ecosystem, Wanda said, shaking her head. It was totally defenseless against the invasive species. What do we do now? We can't let those moth eggs enter the ecosystem. So here's a picture of Arnold finding the moth. And then here's a picture of Dorothy Ann telling the rest of the class what the that type of moth does. And now we are on Chapter 5. I will record Chapter 5 soon. Have a great rest of your day. Make sure you're doing your assignments. Miss you all.